Coming up in Down Under EV Adventures, we hit the road in Germany in our rental car, a Renault Megane E-Tech Electric. Welcome back to Down Under EV Adventures. Well, as you know, I'm back in Australia and we had a wonderful trip over in Europe, mainly in Germany and a few other countries over there. And of course we did quite a bit of driving in our rental car, which is a Renault Megane E-Tech Electric. Now you can go back and have a look at the review which we did on that car. On the whole, it was a pretty good car and it was very nice to rent it and to drive around with it. So today we're going to do one of our longer road trips that we did. So we were staying near the little town, well, actually it's not quite so little, it's quite a big town, of Aachen, which is in northwest Germany. And that's where my wife was sort of born and her family lives nearby. And anyway, we did a trip all the way up to Hamburg via the little town of Celle. And she's got some friends up there and we went and saw them up in Hamburg. So it's quite a long trip, and we spent a couple of nights in Celle on the way. We saw quite a few nice things along the way, so we'll share some of that with you as well, and just what the driving experience was like in an EV in Germany. So if you are looking to go over there, if you don't live in Germany yourself but you want to travel there and perhaps rent an EV, well, this will give you a little bit of information about it. Alright, so let's get into it. Let's hit the road in Germany in the Renault Megane E-Tech Electric. Alright, and our first port of call, like I said, is to the little town of Celle. It's about a 4-hour drive roughly from Aachen, and it's mainly on the Autobahn. Now this is just a rough route. Of course we did not quite take this route, but and you can't really zoom in on the map to see all the roads here, but this is just to give you a rough idea of where we traveled on that trip. It's roughly 4 hours and 401 kilometers, give or take a few kilometers, because of course we stopped at a few places along the way. Now just quickly before we get going, just want to let you know that I didn't do all the economy. I'm just going to do some rough economy statistics. So I did start recording some of it, but I didn't do it all for the whole trip. So yeah, I'll just give you a rough rundown at the end of it. Okay, we're just about to leave on our epic trip to Celle. Everything is reset and we'll see, we're going to have a long trip today of 400 kilometers, maybe a little bit more. Okay, so we've done 143.9 to get to this station here. We're 42%. And you can work that out. So far the average consumption 15.7. It's not bad. Now we didn't top up the battery here, but we just stopped for some food, and these are at Serways, and there's lots of these little places along the highway, and they nearly all have electric chargers as well. Okay, and our first charge is at Serways Auetal Süd, which is south. They usually have two of these little rest stops, one on both sides of the Autobahn, so north and south of it, or west and east if the Autobahn goes the other way. And they have a lot of restaurants there, and yeah, Sabina had a hamburger while she was there. She was pretty happy. And yeah, these are great little stops. They have toilets, of course, and I try to use the Ionity Chargers where I can, so you can go and have a look at the video I've done about EV charging using Ionity. I found them the easiest ones to use when I was in Germany, and thankfully there's plenty of them too, quite often at these rest stops. Anyway, now we're getting very close to the little town of Celle. Okay, so there we made it, 406.1 kilometers, average speed of 72 kilometers. That's not very fast. The average electric consumption though, look at that, 16.6. I would say that is pretty good. And here we are, we've arrived in Celle, which is a beautiful little city. We'll show you some more of that in a minute, but this is some off-street charging which we used while we were there. Now these are becoming quite common in Germany. They're in quite a few locations, and obviously they're great for people who live in apartments, or they don't have, they haven't got parking where they live. Now the downside is you do have to spend a bit of time putting your credit card in and all those sorts of details to charge, and you need your own cable of course as well. The good news is, if you're planning to spend a little bit of time in Celle like we did, and walking around, maybe having a meal or something like that, it's great. You can leave your car for a couple of hours and it will probably be charged when you return. So yeah, we stopped at Celle and we went to a restaurant, had a walk around the city, had a look at the beautiful old buildings, which we'll show you some of in a minute. And then we came back and the car was just about full. So it's AC charging, but you get significantly better speeds than with just the granny charger. So they're a great idea. So this is one where we charged. And now here we are in the beautiful old town of Celle, which has these amazing sort of buildings, which a lot of wooden buildings. They've also got some nice parklands, as you can see here, which we walked around. And like many German cities, they've got modern art as well, mixed in with some of the old buildings. Now, before we go on, we'll just go back to the charging here. Now, when we parked, we couldn't actually get one station to go, so we actually sort of were on the wrong side. So the poor guy in the VW rocked up, and you can see his cable had to stretch up to the other side of it. So, they do have a few little glitches, but we both managed to charge our cars. The guy here in this, I think this is a VW ID Buzz, which is sort of like an electric combi van. So quite an interesting one to see there. The only one we saw actually on our whole travels. Now let's go and have a look and see how this little charging went that we did here in Celle. Charged in Celle, and we are now 97% from the 22 kilowatt AC charger. So that was pretty good. Had a nice dinner in Celle. Now, after a great night's sleep at our great Airbnb there in Celle, the next day we went to a beautiful, very, very large forest which contains some remnant forest, some sort of virgin forest, which is one of the few areas in Germany apparently that does have it. Now, the area is called, if you're interested in going, Lüssberg Gedenkstein it's called. I'll put the spelling on the screen there. And like I said, it's a beautiful old forest area, and Sabina, my wife's sister, tried to find the area where the forest was sort of, very old and like the virgin state. Unfortunately, we couldn't find it because it was such a huge area, but it was a great place to go for a hike. So if you're into hiking like we are, you would love this area. I mean, the trees are just amazing, and I have to say it's one of the largest forests that I've had the pleasure of walking in Europe, and certainly in Germany. It's just huge, the area. There was a little bit of rain. You can see on some of the footage that it's a little bit wet and damp in spots. They did have quite a bit of rain a few days before. As you can see, it's just an amazing place to go for a walk. So here's some footage of the lovely forest walk that we did, which is very close to Celle. after another night in Celle, we next go to a tiny little place called Bergen. Now Bergen, I'll just put a little screenshot of the main street on it here, you can have a look. This is where I lived as a very young child back in the early 1970s when I was about 2 or 3. The reason being is my dad was in the army, the British Army, and he served in Germany, and he served in this little particular place, and we went there with my family. I was only about 2 or 3 at the time, and I don't really remember a great deal about it, but we decided to go there on our way to Hamburg, mainly because I wanted to have a look at where I lived as a child. So we made the little trip up there, and as you can see, it's a very short drive. It's only 21 minutes drive just north of Celle. And just finally, if you want to know about the history of the town, it's sort of like a military town. So when Germany was just West Germany and East Germany and not, unified like they are now, well, they used to have troops stationed there. I believe it's still a military town, but it's more for the German army rather than, armies from other countries. All right, let's drive to my little previous hometown when I was a very young boy. Okay, so it's time to hit the road for our last stretch after a great visit to my little hometown, I guess you could call, when I was very young. It's now just 99 kilometers and just over an hour until we finally get to Hamburg and ending our long trip. Okay, and these last few images you can see here is us driving into the outer part of Hamburg in an area called Bergen, which is a lovely area, beautiful and green, and a very nice place where we stayed for a few days. Now, that very night, we went out to a show in Hamburg. We went to the theatre and we went and saw a Harry Potter show. Now, Hamburg it's quite famous for its theatre shows. And we went to a show which translates to Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, which is a theatre production which is showing in Hamburg among other places. Now, I can't show you the actual show itself, of course, because you're not allowed to film, but yeah, we had access to a lounge and there's a shop there where you can buy stuff. Now, this is the new novel by J.K. Rowling. It's not really a novel, it's sort of like based on the actual play of the show, so it's sort of a theatre show basically, and that's the only way you can sort of see the story. And all in all, it was a fantastic show. Thoroughly enjoyed it, even though I only probably understood about 20-25% with my German. Now, from Germany, this is where our German trip ends. From there we caught a train and we went up to Copenhagen. So we took the train up there, which is about a 4-hour train ride, I think it is, or 4.5 hours. And that was a lovely train trip up there. And Copenhagen is a lovely, lovely city. If you've never been there, it's a very nice place to go. Denmark is, a very nice country to visit. A very expensive country. I was amazed at how much everything cost. But boy, they have some nice attractions there, and it was lovely. We did so much there. So Denmark, definitely put it on your bucket list if you can get there, and go and see Copenhagen. It's a lovely city. And anyway, but that's where our trip draws to a close. And of course, if you're interested in catching up with our travels here in Australia and also overseas, you can head over to Finding G-Spots. I'll put a link in the description if you want to head over there. Otherwise, stick around now. I promised you some statistics regarding the economy of the Renault Megane E-Tech Electric. Let's go and check it out. Okay, so I've already mentioned some of the statistics when I did the review of the car, so you can go back and have a look at that if you like as well. But basically the car performed pretty well, and on average we used between about 14 and 16 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers, and that was a mixture of roads. So of course we did use the autobahn quite a bit when we were traveling between towns. Otherwise, in the town itself, you're mainly on smaller roads, of course, and there's the occasional rural roads as well, which we used. So the autobahn, you can imagine the speed is up to, we usually travel between 110 and 130 where you're allowed to. Otherwise, on rural roads, you're sort of traveling between 80 and 100. And of course, in most little towns, you can only go about 40 or 50 kilometers an hour. So I thought the economy was pretty good. And of course, once you're on the autobahn traveling at those high speeds, well, then the economy jumps up to around that 18 mark. But we've pretty much finished with an average of just under 16, which I think is pretty good. Okay, so we're just about to wrap it up today in today's episode. It's been a long one, so thank you very much. If you stuck around to now, you deserve a medal. Thank you very much for sticking with me. So yeah, all in all, it was a fantastic trip, and we really enjoyed our driving around Germany with the Renault Megane. It's quite a good vehicle, and like I said, go and check out our review if you're interested in that particular vehicle. Otherwise, Germany's a pretty EV friendly place, as you'd expect, and there are certainly a lot of chargers and a lot of places you can go. Alright, so that's it for today's episode. Thanks again for joining me. We've got some great content coming up, including, of course, back in Australia with a few tests on the Atto 3. Alright, take care as usual on the roads, and we'll see you very soon. Bye for now.